Hello there, beautiful and well fans. Don't mind the violin, this is just my way to cope after watching the Empire Lestat episode 3, Toronto. Because, man, was this a very heart-crushing episode? Yes, it was. So, let's dive into it. Welcome to the Savage Garden Talks. And as I'm having a mental breakdown, we're going to break down the episode because, guys, I'm not doing fine after this episode. My soul was absolutely crushed, and we need to discuss this right away. If I had no knowledge of the books, I would rate this episode with 5 stars. However, as the book lover I am, I'm gonna take 1 star off because I'm not really enjoying the way some details are being adapted into the show. However, I still loved this episode. The narrative devices that were used to portray these specific plot lines were perfectly painful. And I loved it especially because this episode was all about trauma and loneliness, which are 2 eternal companions of our beloved characters in the books. So it was really interesting to see those 2 elements being adapted on screen with so clever and metaphorical devices. Let's begin with our beloved Louis de Pont-du-Lac and his blade tie, because I love chaotic Louis, which is not something only from the show. Louis is pretty violent and chaotic in the books as well when he needs to be. Because every time something goes wrong, especially in Interview with the Vampire, Louis sets everything on fire. So I love seeing this side of Louis on screen all the time. And of course we were really expecting to see this moment happen. And not as a way of justice for Claudia, because Claudia is long gone. She's not here anymore. She cannot feel some sort of relief to see Killer in that position. I think what Louis did was a selfish reason, but also a valid reason. Because Louis will always feel remorse and regret towards Claudia. Because Louis was not the perfect companion, and he wronged Claudia in many ways. So I think he saw this hunting down of Killer as a way to atone for the ways he wronged Claudia. And even though it was selfish, I think it was also important for his character development. Even though I don't think he's making much progress, because right after that he goes to the coffee shop where there is this doppelganger of Claudia. I don't know if she's really a doppelganger or if it's just a girl that Louis actually sees as Claudia, because he projects Claudia into her face. I really hope it's more like the second case, because if that's a doppelganger of Claudia, then why are we getting into so much doppelganger stuff in this season? I'm not convinced about that. But yeah, I think this was some sort of atonement for Louis, for himself, not for Claudia, but for himself. And I absolutely loved the chaos. I loved seeing Killer finally paying for what he did to Claudia. And does Louis have the cloud gift now? He didn't have it in the previous 2 seasons, so I'm not sure, because it could have been just a big jump, but to me it looked more like levitating. So what do you guys think? Now, so let's address the elephant in the room. Magnus. First, what an absolutely exceptional Magnus we have. He's horrifying, he's creepy, he's very ugly, he's missing some teeth. He's really a very good depiction of how Magnus is described in the books, so I'm very happy with it. But let's also talk about how Lestat's transformation parallels with the abuse Claudia endured. First off, I like that the show addressed the way Lestat tends to romanticize what happened between him and Magnus, which is also something Lestat does in the books, through the Wolf Killer's Song, which is such a heartbreaking but also beautiful tune. And even in the montage when we see Magnus stalking Lestat in the theater and then abducting him and then biting into his flesh, we can see some sort of pleasure expression on Lestat's face. But then we get to the car scene, and now we are really seeing the real thing. In this moment, Lestat is in a very vulnerable state, emotionally speaking. And as he's being haunted by ghost memories of his past, he starts to remember what actually happened that night, and there was no pleasure in it. There was no pleasure expression at all. There was only horror. It was a nightmare. And these particular scene was so perfectly adapted on screen, because as I was watching, I remember when I read that scene the first time, and it was literally all that I pictured in that moment. It was so perfectly adapted and so heartbreakingly horrible to see, to witness. And while all of that is happening with Lestat, we see Louis reading to Killer from those missing pages of Claudia's diaries the things he did to him. And we witness side to side the horrible experiences that both Claudia and Lestat had to endure. And this is when trauma as a vampire companion comes to play into this episode. And it's also the way neither of them got any justice after those horrific events. And this is why this scene was such a powerful narrative device that portrayed how two different moments from two different time periods felt so painfully similar for two different characters, Lestat and Claude. And this is why I think this is one of the best scenes written in the show, because it's genuinely overwhelming and so well executed. Moving on with the episode, let's talk about Nikki. Okay guys, this is serious to me. Nikki was the character that I was most excited to see because he's my favorite character in the Vampire Chronicles. And my god, Joseph is the best actor we could have ever dreamed of for Nikki. He's just perfect. He's literally all I imagined or all I pictured from Nikki when I was reading about him. And he's genuinely perfect. I couldn't have wished for any other actor. Joseph Potter, you have my heart. Now, as it's been happening with most of the flashbacks this season, all about Nikki felt absolutely rushed. Like, they are just skimming the backstory of Lestat, but we'll go back to it later. I need to talk about Nikki and the changes that were made to his character. I was really expecting to see Nikki saying the lines that Lestat told Miss Lily in the first episode of the interview with the Vampire, because that is what Nikki tells Lestat when he gives him the cloak. Only the impossible can do the impossible. And since Lestat mentions that phrase in the pilot for Interview with the Vampire, I was really expecting to hear it from Nikki, but alas, it didn't happen. However, even though Nikki didn't give the cloak to Lestat like in the book, I did like that they kept that it was Nikki's father the one who made the cloak. And that's the connection of Nikki and the cloak and Lestat. And I really need to say that those 2 seconds we had of Nikki's stats as humans were everything to me. Like Nikki playing his violin and Lestat reciting those same words in the books he says about the passion that Nikki has when he plays his instrument were, oh my god, so perfect. And then their little chat in the bar when they're just talking about their hometown and their parents, and then, you know, Nikki's father telling Lestat to make a man out of his son. And yeah, it went where all of us were expecting it to go, but the scene cut to black. So we didn't get any actual action from Nikki's dad because they decided to cut the scene. I hope they show us more of that scene in later episodes, because why would they cut it to black if they have a scene like this one in that same episode? Let's just talk about it later. Now, regarding what was changed from the version of Nikki in the book, I don't mind that Nikki is the one who cuts his hand. In the book, is Armand the one who cuts his hand. But I did enjoy that because of his madness. In a moment of no thinking, he simply cut his hand because he had no sense in him any longer. And I think it was a good attribute to add to Nikki's madness, which is his ending, his finale. That's what takes Nikki out of the narrative. Now, what I didn't really enjoy is the fact that in the show, Armand apparently kills Nikki with the permission of Lestat, which I know it was supposed to be a merciful act. But in the books, Nikki, even with his madness, has the sense to put an end to it all. And yes, Armand was involved in the death of Nikki because Armand didn't really help Nikki to get better. Armand made Nikki's madness worse, and so he's passively involved in that final decision Nikki took. But I always felt that decision of Nicky of ending his own life was the catharsis of the character. That was his peak point. There was nowhere else to go. And I don't really like that they took that away from Nicky in the show. So yeah, I was not a fan of that, but of course I still enjoyed everything about Nicky, and we actually didn't see the scene. Now, Nicky was great, and let's talk about the flashbacks. Because, again, why is everything so rushed? I feel they are just merely skimming over Lestat's backstory, and mind you, the Vampire Lestat book is 90% Lestat's backstory and 10% Lestat as a rock star in the present. So it's really disappointing to see everything going through so quickly when many of us were waiting so many years to see this story digestively adapted. Like, we wanted to not just see flashbacks from Lestat's story, we wanted to see Lestat's story completely, not just as merely rushed memories. So yeah, I'm still not loving the flashbacks because I feel everything is rushed. There are only 4 episodes left. I hope they revisit some stuff, but I'm not really a fan of the way they are portraying all of the memories of Lestat. Regarding the flashbacks as well, they didn't revisit the scene of Lestat and Nicky with the Children of Darkness coven, which was, we were all expecting to see that scene revisited with Gabriela now next to Lestat, because we know that's how it actually went in the books. And we know that Armand purposely removed Gabriela from his narration because he doesn't like Gabriela. So I was really disappointed that they simply reused scenes from season 2 and they didn't revisit that part at all. Like, yes, you know this, let's move on. Maybe they will show us more of that in the next episodes, but I think they simply didn't reshoot that scene, and that's the scene is what we saw in season 2. And I'm so disappointed by that too. I was really expecting to see that scene with Gabriela and with Lestat's version of that moment. The theater scene was revisited, but I don't know, it feels flat. If we're going to revisit a scene, we need to add more to it. And I felt this was basically the very same scene with some more details to it, like Gabriela being included and Nicholas screaming, "I give you the theater of the vampires," which was a very good wink to the books, but I wanted that phrase to have more meaning, because that is the phrase that Nicky says when he creates the theater of the vampires, and that is something he says when he and Lestat are completely breaking apart. So it's a very meaningful phrase in the books, and in here it's just like some random phrase Nicky says inside his madness. And talking about the theater, after all the dedication they gave to the theater of the vampires in season 2, because it's really splendid what they did with the theater, I was expecting to see more of the origins of the theater in these flashbacks, but we got any of it. Like, in the books, Lestat does not like the idea of the theater of the vampires, he's actually repelled by it, and he leaves Nicky to that idea because he knew that Nicky could survive a few years with that entertainment, but he didn't love the idea. However, we know that in the show, Lestat actually likes the idea, and he's one of the co-founders of the theater, and he acts as Death in the theater. So I was really expecting to see more of the origins of the theater in the show, the version they crafted for this series, and we got anything new. We got what we already knew. So after all the dedication they put through the theater, I'm really shocked that they didn't show us more of it. Maybe they will show us more in the next episode, but who knows? Until now, I'm not really completely satisfied with everything they've shown. Now, I need to address the actual detail that made me take 1 star out of my personal rating of the show. And because I could have forgiven the changes made to Nicky and to the theater and the rushed flashbacks, I'm not a fan of it, but I could have lived with it and enjoyed more the episode if they didn't butcher Gabriel or Gabriela as a character so much in this adaptation. Yes, it is true. In the books, Gabrielle is a very cold character. She's a neglectful mother. She's not perfect, but she's far from a sexual predator with Lestat. She and Lestat do have an incestuous dynamic, but it's not like fetish that she has for Lestat. It's far from that. And in this version, I feel she has some sort of fetish and some sort of sexual perversion towards her son that completely changes what she originally was in the book. Like, what the hell was that scene with Jarda? That's what I meant when they took away from us glorious minutes of Nikki's love scene to give us Gabriela and Jarda and some horrifying moaning that were so vulgar and unnecessary. What was that? Gabrielle would have never done that in the book. Even if the vampires in the book had sex, she wouldn't have done that. Like, it's so out of character. I think this is a completely different Gabrielle. I think the name Gabriela actually works for the character because she's not Gabrielle. She's Gabriela, she's a different character, she's so unlikable, she's so mean towards Lestat. Like, she spent the whole episode laughing at Lestat's feelings. She spent the whole episode mocking Lestat, provoking him with Jarda. And then they show us also that she was equally mean to Nikki. Like, in the books, Gabrielle is fond of Nikki. Actually, when Lestat turns Nikki into a vampire, that is another thing. They didn't show us Nikki's transformation. I was really expecting to see that. But okay, moving on. When Lestat turns Nikki, he cannot be next to him afterwards because he feels repelled by him. So it's Gabrielle, the one who takes care of Nikki. She talks to him telepathically. She takes care of him. She makes him company. She is fond of him. She's actually the one that makes the possibility of Lestat and Nikki running away together to Paris. So why is she so mean? She completely despises Nikki here in the show. And it's another, I mean, they made this character into like a caricature of what she really was. Because yes, she was cold, she was neglectful, she was not perfect, she did have incestuous dynamics with her son, but she was not a pervert, sex maniac that mocks everything about his son and that was evil to his boyfriend. She was not that. And I'm really disappointed at the way they completely butchered a character that is so beloved by many of us, because I could have forgiven if they didn't adapt the transcoded arc of the character. But the fact that they not only omit that, but they also completely changed everything she was, I'm not happy with it. Okay, to wrap things up, I'm curious as to why Armand was in an AA meeting in Ohio. I think Armand might be after Alex, because he's literally the only connection I could make as to why Armand is there. But I'm interested. I don't really know what to think of it, but he's plotting something. The Gremlin is plotting something. Now, I already mentioned you what I feel about Regina. I hope that she's more like a projection of Claudia, like Louis is seeing Claudia in her, and that she's not really a doppelganger of Claudia, because where are we going with this whole doppelganger stuff? I know that they needed Jarda because if they adapt the Tale of the Body Thief, they can't just get rid of Sam Reed for a whole season. So they need to keep Sam Reed around. But if they are incorporated doppelgangers for every character, where are we going with this? Lemuel is another character that I am intrigued by, because Louis said he was something casual, but that is not something that someone would do with a casual relationship. So what's going on there? Is Louis really enough companion for himself? And is Lemuel really a fledgling vampire? Or could he be an older, ancient vampire that granted Louis the cloud gift power? Just as Magnus and Gabriela left Lestat while he was singing The Loneliness on stage, I'm leaving you too. But just as Nikki stayed in the audience, because Nikki will always be with Lestat, and also staying tuned for next episode. And the Loneliness song, perfect depiction of the horrific and heavy vampire loneliness, which it was also a bit sad to see Daniel just hunting alone by himself, like he's a baby. We need his maker to take care of him. So Armand, please come into the picture. And we'll see you next week to discuss more about this episode we all love so much.